That movie, you've got to see that movie. It's produced by Tom Hanks and his producing partner Gary Getzman. And in Gary Getzman's office, I've been over there a couple of times. He has the poster, and I go like, the first part of the poster is my rave quote on that movie because I wanted everybody to go see this movie. And it's sometimes so hard to get them to see a smaller movie. You've been in all the big ones, but you've been in some little gems too, like this one.
Yeah, I had a great time doing that. I just finished doing quite a few months as George Tesman in Hedda Gabler, watching Eve Best blow her brains out every night, and it was involved. And James McAvoy turned to me at one point and said, "You're having a great time doing this, aren't you, pal?" And I went, "That's a very bad Scottish accent for any Scots in the audience. Sorry about that." And I went, "Yes, because I've been doing Ibsen for 6 months." So I loved it, and I loved Patrick. I was very fond of him and his weaknesses, and just what an amazing cast. And David is a fantastic writer, whose book it was, who adapted it as well. And it was an absolute joy to do that job. I've got very fond memories of it.
Yeah, it's very much at the top of your beginning of your feature film career. It's one to check out. And when you talk about the cast, it's kind of like the American Graffiti of British films. James McAvoy, Alice Eve, James Corden, Rebecca Hall, Dominic Cooper, all were in this movie.
Dan Stevens, who else?
Yeah, Dan Stevens.
I mean, it goes on. It's kind of amazing. It really is. It really is. And it was a joy. It was an absolute joy to do. It really was.
So great. Okay, they're going to scream when I say this. Let's talk about Sherlock.
Oh, all right then.
Oh my gosh. Did you know when you took this on for the first time that it was going to be this kind of iconic series that people related to and really wanted to watch over and over and over?
Yep. You did. No. I mean, what I knew was that it was already a very iconic role and an iconic hero, and there'd be a lot of attention. And I knew when I was sort of putting my motorbike helmet on, having left the audition, I thought this could be big. I mean, as in there would be a lot of attention on it, and it would have been the first sort of openly kind of commercial decision or role that I wanted to play. And yet there was something so classy about it that it didn't feel commercial for the commercial's sake. It didn't just feel like, getting the old, what do you call them, those pads out and resurrecting that character again for the hell of it. It felt like a very reverent re-examination of him through the 21st century, but with such adoration of the original material, loads of Easter eggs for fans of the Conan Doyle novels, and two extraordinary fanboys writing in the form of the brilliant Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. So it was kind of a winning formula. And when Martin came into audition and just raised my game massively, I thought that's a great piece of chemistry. That's a really great combination, and the rest kind of took off from there. But but at the same time, none of us really knew quite how stupendously successful it would be. And it was the kind of birth of Twitter. It was the first time, certainly that I can remember, sitting around with the producers and the directors when it aired on the BBC that night, and going, Jesus Christ, you've just run to your phones, your laptops, what's going on? And they went, look what's happening, it's trending, it's worldwide, your name is trending worldwide. I didn't even know what this meant, but by the end of the evening, I thought I was going to sort of exit Sue Virtue's house and be assaulted in Kew in Richmond, which was very quiet at that time. Reporters helicoptering down and abseiling with photographers, and people running out of the houses going, oh my God! I was kind of disappointed that my taxi was a bit late and there was no one there. I was like, this modern world's a bit connected, isn't it? But then it just snowballed after that, and it was such a fun ride. I say the past tense, we never say never, but for now anyway. But it was, in that moment, it was extraordinary, and we even Stephen is not arrogant enough to presume it would have been the biggest hit as it was. It was phenomenal, and the reach of it. I mean, television's reach is extraordinary, really extraordinary, and pre-streaming, it kind of blew my mind. It was. I think it was really the security team in the pool when we were shooting the opening sequence of Doctor Strange that were like, "You're fine, we got it covered. Look, we look after Chris Hemsworth. You're going to be fine." And I was like, yeah, no, okay, great. And then by the end of the first day at these burning ghats, as I was going down to a bridge to ask for Cumberbatch, you know, wandering around the lost, hairy Stephen Strange. Stephen, by the way, but that's fine, don't worry. I think you called him Peter earlier, but that's fine. But just being a pedant, because there are people out there that care. And yeah, I want you to get home safely. That's all. Steve, it's all right. And they were like, I can see that's the person's taking a photograph. But okay. And they were like, no, it's all fine. And the next day there were 100 people, and then by the end of the third day, the whole of Durban Square had been overtaken by people chanting Benedict or Sherlock. It just, you know, that was the same year as they'd had their earthquake. I mean, it was that far away in such a country struggling that much, and yet it still resonated there. I mean, it's kind of extraordinary, the reach of that program.
But it was brought up, it was a very different version, and, you know, he's kind of, just the language, the dialogue was amazing what you did in that role.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it was awful. I mean, there were hard days at the office on that one. It was extraordinarily difficult to sort of speak faster than thought and just not have any kind of breathing time to reach the next trigger for the next line, for the next memory, and just be breathing it faster and faster. And actually the West film I'm doing now, Wes Anderson's film, is very reminiscent of those deduction scene days. It's hard, but it's kind of amazing. It's a good brain gym. But yeah, what a joy. And I'd read them, and the brilliance of them. I mean, some of them are just spurious nonsense, but the red herring is so, it doesn't matter. It's just so dazzling, no matter how ludicrous it may be, you know. The hem of your trousers seems to be worn at the back. That must mean you lost weight, therefore you have been on a diet. Therefore you can't have fitted into that room, and therefore you weren't the killer. You know, it's that kind of thing. It's like, it's just nonsense. But it's sort of, you know, it's kind of, and that's after 2 margaritas.
It's pretty
Imagine
good.
what I was like after my first coffee. Yeah.
Pretty good.
This is my second.
I wanted to ask you about another iconic thing you were in, 12 Years a Slave, which of course won Best Picture, and you played William Ford.
Yeah.
And that looked like a very, very tough role to play, because he's not a good guy really, but he's a complex guy. So, you know, he's not just a black and white kind of villain thing.
Not at all. And I think, you know, Epps' character, Michael Fassbender, who was just astonishing and was astonishing in that film, you know, the violence of that role, the confliction between loving the thing he hated was very visceral and real and terrifying. And yet my character's duplicity, the fact that he was a Christian man and he was denying the knowledge of Solomon being a free man, being someone who'd been captured or enslaved from the North as a free man, and he knew it. He knew nobody would have that intelligence to be able to engineer a channel through the bayous to be able to, you know, ship cotton and other materials through canals, and the engineering mind for that, the educated mind for that, was not something that was on offer for a man born into slavery. He had to have experienced education as a free man. And yeah, I found the duplicity of him, to me, in many ways even worse, because it's the silent, it's the embedded within the cultural, it's the unspoken but just very all-present structural racism which we're dealing with now. And that's kind of what he embodied, don't you think? Yeah, exactly. And to expose that hypocrisy and to show, yes, he's a man with a family to protect, and he's in a bind because there's a very violent man who's after him, and he's owed money. But it's all about, it's a human life over money, and it's as much about capitalism at that point as it is about racism. But the two things go hand in hand, as we know. You know.
Well, it's something, and with a great director. I love this guy, Steve Mcqueen.
Extraordinary.
Amazing. He must have been just tremendous to work with.
He was dynamite, and he would just kind of he'd do interesting things. And, you know, it reminds me of Jane as well, in a way, you know, to throw a kind of grenade into a situation to disturb the silt and just get you to feel and be different. I remember Paul Giamatti turning up from a plane from New York and just arriving in down south where we were shooting, and in New Orleans, and you know, at the first dinner, everyone's chatting away and getting to know each other, and it's all very familial and lovely and respectful. And Stephen goes, "Where was everyone on 9/11? What was your 9/11 night? Paul, what was your 9/11 night?" And Paul was like, "What are we doing this? What are you? What the fuck?" I sort of went out and had a cigarette. Was really, really disturbed. You know, 3 days later, that man was on set and he was having to smack naked actors who were in a slave auction. He wasn't Paul Giamatti in that moment. And Steve wanted to disturb him, to get him somewhere, to see what he was like when he was uncomfortable, to see if he could manage him. And it was extraordinary. And I mean, I didn't quite get it. Chiwetel had been there. I joined halfway through the shoot, so Chiwetel was like, watch, you know, this is a thing, you know, because I felt a bit sorry for Paul in that moment. But it was, he's a remarkable antagonist, really. He antagonizes culture, he examines it and antagonizes like Jane does. They're both visionaries, and they revel in the fact that things can be revealed through something that is uncomfortable to lens and look at, and they don't flinch. They both have sensuality. They both have a respect for what the very worst of humanity is, as well as the very best, and they want to examine it in order to understand the full picture and not come down on one side or the other, but try and understand what makes that happen, hopefully to avoid it, you know.
Well, that's the power of film, too.
Yeah.
For sure, be able to do that, make a movie like that, and make it so successful, too. So we're going to look at 3 clips right now. We're going to look at Sherlock, 12 Years a Slave, and one of the greatest performances of Benedict Cumberbatch in a series called Patrick Melrose. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Let's take a look at these clips.